Hey everybody, and welcome to another adventure in history. Hope everybody's doing well. Things are, not so bad around here. Hope you're having a great one, and I just realized that I don't have the map loaded or turned on. So, yeah, boom, there we go. Okay. Fun fact, the majority of history stories have war in them. Luckily, this one won't. Yeah, but it does. Actually has quite a bit of war. We all know Japan and Korea, right? They get along like famous people. Like, this is great. They're best of buds. There we go. All right. So welcome everybody, and this is Adventures in History, and what we do on the show is talk about history, but also just goof off and have a good time, and all sorts of fun stuff like that. Tell bad jokes, go on diatribes about which Star Wars movies are the best, very frequently refer to bad 80s action movies. All that fun stuff, right? And we're starting a new phase. So if you are new to the channel and are not familiar with how we do things, we are covering history chronologically on Thursdays. And we started literally all the way back when humans first became humans. You're in a diet tribe. Does that count? Maybe? So, hey, Shiggy, and hey, Meg. Good to see you both. Thanks for stopping in. Diet tribes, close enough. We'll call it, yeah. Okay. Everybody gets a free pass tonight, right? So, yeah. So we're covering history chronologically, but to try to make that easier to approach without having to do, like, every year, I have decided that we're basically going to cover stuff by centuries. Or so. Sometimes we fudge a little bit on the lines, but that's okay. You can forgive us, right? And we talk about history in order. And we are starting a new phase, which means we're starting a new century. So for the next couple of months, we're going to be talking about the 3rd century. So this is the year 200 to the year 300. And it's got a lot of interesting stuff going on, and a lot of the big things and a lot of the big groups that we have been talking about for the past couple of phases are going to go through some ups and downs, if you will. And there's going to be a lot of war, which I know Shiggy was joking about, but yeah, it happens a lot. There's also going to be some really interesting developments when it comes to global movement of peoples. So we've got some big migrations that we're going to be talking about. And just overall, it's a really active century. And there's a lot of ups and downs in this century. So if you've liked some of the people that have been hanging around in the last couple of phases, you might find them not around anymore, because we do lose a couple of really big empires during this period. But we gained some new friends, and, new players have entered the game. Hey, Joey, good to see you. And we normally start sort of with the date line. So the international date line runs more or less right down the middle of the Pacific Ocean right here. And we sort of start this way and move over. And we tend to not pick up civilizations until they hit the level where they are building cities. Sometimes we'll do some what might be considered Stone Age stuff, and we'll include that as a primer to help catch us up to where we are. We'll actually talk about that a little bit when we get down into Southeast Asia for the first time actively in this phase. So, general question. We're all aware that people spin their accounts of current events Are we less critical of historical accounts of the societies they're about just because they're old? Meg, that is a great question. And I can tell you that the answer is no, we're not just automatically less critical of them. Most good historians are going to be aware that the history that these ancient people are writing is very much biased. And there's an entire field of sort of overlap between literature and history called source criticism, where we do a lot of comparative analysis, we do a lot of breakdown. There's a lot of bringing in archaeological data and evidence, and the goal of source criticism is essentially to see what parts of the documents count when it comes to actual provable fact, and which ones are just overinflated or perhaps biased or maybe even just outright lies. Hey, KP, good to see you. And we'll actually talk about some of that tonight because we are going to have to deal with a couple of the ancient Japanese sources that are not necessarily very trustworthy because we don't have a lot of archaeological evidence to back them up. So we are going to venture a little bit into shaky territory tonight when we talk about the earliest imperial clans of Japan, or clan, the Yamato clan. And we're going to get a little bit out of the comfortable, provable fact world, but we'll be okay. We will make it very clear when we're talking about speculative things. So, that's a great question. But to sort of sum all of that up, yes, we are very critical of ancient people. Just because it is written does not mean that we accept it, and there are a lot of historians that take that very, very seriously. KP. When he was working on some graduate and doctoral level classwork stuff, was pretty big into source criticism, looking at these particular documents that are fairly common. We have lots of copies of them, but looking for what are called variants, where one document will say one thing using one particular word, and then another document that was written perhaps later or earlier or at the same time but a different part of the world writes the same passage but includes a different word. That's called a variant, a textual variant. And trying to look at which word is more frequently used, which word might particularly or potentially change the outcome of the passage overall. That sort of stuff is really, really big in a lot of historical worlds, or realms, if you will. And there are a lot of people that spend a lot of time doing that. I cannot claim to be the world's greatest source critic. There's the word that I'm looking for. I have never formally done that as any sort of job or anything of that nature. But if you get into the history field or any sort of ancient field doing archaeology, you run into that and you pick up the basics of it. And I always try to be a little bit skeptical. I probably am... I'm a little bit different in the way that I look at ancient stuff than a lot of people that are currently doing history, because I think that to a certain extent we have to give people the benefit of the doubt. And if we can't prove that it's wrong, and we can't directly question what they state, and we don't have any good reason to question it, we could probably just treat it like it is more or less a fact until we know otherwise. A lot of people are super duper skeptical. They basically won't accept anything ever unless we have archaeological proof or backup or something like that. So I'm probably a little bit out on the limb sometimes. You've always wondered about this kind of thing since getting into trouble in a history class. Oh, really? What'd you get in trouble for? If you want to share, you can share, but if you don't, you don't have to. Since Shane is our source here, should we criticize him? You're not wearing a plain-looking shirt. Not cool. I'm wearing a House of Blues t-shirt that was given to me by a dear friend. And it's a pretty cool stuff. I like the House of Blues. Why would the Japanese ever lie about their history? They have always been defending their land, occasionally on soil sometimes claimed by other people. Right. Well, it's fair to say that any culture that writes a lot about itself is going to almost certainly put itself in the best light. This is true of any culture. We can talk about the Romans, who thought that they were the apex of civilization. This is true of the Chinese, who thought that they were the apex of civilization. We could talk about modern America. The way that we portray ourselves in the media right now is highly biased because that's just the way that people try to portray themselves. There are very few people that are interested in exposing the unvarnished truth because it can get kind of dirty sometimes, right? Did We Didn't Start the Fire complete? Yes, it completed. So that is going to be scheduled. You were being told about the significance of some cave paintings. You simply said, maybe a Stone Age guy with a talent for drawing was trying to impress a girl and get some action. Meg, I would be perfectly fine with that interpretation. I would be 100% okay with that. Because guess what? That stuff happens. Human beings do that kind of stuff all the time. And it's okay for that to have been a thing. I talk, the friend of the channel, Cave Geek, and I talk all the time about how archaeologists are way too quick to jump on something as a ritual object, right? Like, we found this stick, and it's been carved like a snake. This is clearly a ritual object used in a ceremony. Or maybe it's just some dude carving a snake. Maybe he just thought snakes are cool and wanted to carve a snake, right? Does it have to be a ritual object? Is this a snake cult now? Can we jump to that conclusion? Hey, Drop Bear, good to see you. You mean history is written by the victors? Gasp, right? Your point is exactly. Don't give you the highbrow stuff just to make yourself seem clever. I try my best not to do that. I try my best to stay open to the idea that it could have just been some basic everyday garbage. Not saying that ancient stuff is garbage. I mean, some ancient stuff is garbage, and we actually enjoy digging through it. Thanks, Oxyrhynchus. But, yeah. It's okay for not everything to be the breakthrough discovery. And I think that it actually cheapens some things that are breakthrough discoveries because so many things are automatically treated like breakthrough discoveries. But a lot of that comes from the fact that archaeology and history is critically underfunded, and everybody sort of has to sell their work to get funding. The funds for archaeology and history research are drying up really, really rapidly. And it's not just happening here in the United States, it's happening all over the world. No, all ancient stuff is because of aliens. Of course, it must be true. The History Channel says so. I mean, clearly, right? Clearly it's aliens. All right, let me take just a minute to do some sort of housekeeping stuff. We have had 2 community goals hit completion in the last couple of streams. So we had a History of Middle-earth stream that hit completion, and we Didn't Start the Fire hit completion. And it was my intention initially to do a History of Middle-earth stream this Saturday. However, I have spoken with several people that are big in the support for the channel, that have donated a lot of points, and they're not going to be able to watch on Saturday. And normally I would take into account, well, you could still watch the VOD, but we're also expecting a hurricane this weekend. So because of potential hurricane activity, I think I should not actively schedule a stream this weekend. If the things don't go crazy, and the hurricane moves or turns into just a whole bunch of rain, I might pop up and do some Gundam building, but I don't think that I should schedule an actual event this weekend and then get everybody excited about it and then, we not have any power or something like that. Oh yeah, Drop Bear, living in the Gulf Coast. So I live right around here. And living in the Gulf Coast is always a thing around this time of year. The hurricanes, they're going to show up, right? It's almost impossible to get around them. That is quitter talk. If there's no sharks in the hurricane, you're fine. Hey, sci-fi, good to see you. Yeah, that's Sharknado. And if it were a Sharknado, I'd probably cancel the stream. But hurricanes are a little bit Sharkicane, yeah. Oh, you saw your house. You're down here, aren't you, Meg? I thought you were down in this world, in the down under. I could have had that completely wrong, though. I will admit that sometimes it's hard for me to keep up with all of the data that I know about people. Ida comes, indeed. Ida is bearing down on us. So, when you lived in Oklahoma City, you had a Tiger-nado. I don't even know what that means. Bottom left corner of Australia. You live down here in Perth? Is that Perth? That's down. No, that's not Perth. That's yeah, that is Perth. That's what I thought. I won't dox you. I try to know my geography. I don't know all geography, but I try. Tornadoes and some tigers got loose from the Tiger King compound. Oh, wow. You're waving now. We dubbed it Tiger-nado. That sounds amazing and also horrible. You're on the other side of that continent. All right. Enhance. Enhance. I got that reference, Shiggy. I got that reference. All right. Since we are starting a new phase, let us take a moment to look at where we're headed. So I found this website by this guy named Thomas Lessman, who has made a whole bunch of maps of the world and does Eastern and Western Hemisphere, but he does them by centuries, and I find this absolutely amazing. So this is just a little bit of a here's where we're going if we sort of look at what's going on in the world. So we're going to switch over here to the old images, and we're going to look at where we're going. So this is at 300 CE or AD, whichever one you want to use. And by the end of this phase, we will see a lot of new people. So if we note, look how big the Roman Empire has become. Oh yeah. And we've talked about Blamies and Mero and Aksum down here. But look at this. We see some new people showing up. We've got some Huns. We've got the big Persian Empire showing up. The Sassanids are going to end up taking over there. India, as we might expect, is going to sort of fall back apart. But a couple of these groups are going to be pretty important, like the Vakataka here, and we'll talk about them a little bit. Down here in Southeast Asia, we get our first really big organized state, the Funan. We'll talk about them. We'll have a Southeastern Asian stream coming up. We see that the Han Dynasty doesn't exist anymore, and now we have this new thing called the Jin Dynasty. I wonder what happens there. Hint, bad things. We have the Xianbei and the Xiongnu still around, but note that the Xianbei are way bigger than they used to be. And then over here, we have ourselves the Yamato court in Japan, and we still have our old three kingdoms in Korea, the Shilla, the Pekja, and the Goguryeo. So, lots of new players coming up, and we will have ourselves a fun time talking about how everything changes in this world. Won't work, this ain't CSI. You can't know where we are going. History can't predict the future. Just accept it. I don't know. I'm pretty skeptical about that. Is he related to Michael Bay? What, Sean Bay? I don't think so. I don't think they're directly related. I don't know if Michael Bay has any Asian family members or not. All right, but let us talk about Korea. And for the last couple of phases, we've been talking about three kingdoms in Korea, and those three kingdoms are still around. And let us sort of check in on them one by one. And we'll start off with the Shilla. And I know that looks like Silla, but it is pronounced with a sh sound. So Shilla. And we'll be referring to this one particular map because I've actually finally found a really good map of exactly what the Korean kingdoms and confederacies looked like at this point. I cannot tell you how excited I was to find this map, and that should tell you a little bit about the kind of person that I am, that I get excited about finding a map. So here we go. Just look for evidence of explosions. Those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. That's the way that it's stated. So talk like Sean Connery. Yes, we're talking about the Shilla. The three kingdoms, but not the ones you think of normally. Correct. We'll actually talk about the other three kingdoms, the three kingdoms of China, but that's in a stream for later, right? Okay, so here we go. I found a really great map of Korea. This is in 204. So we see our big kingdoms here. The three big ones are this guy up here, which is Goguryeo, Shilla, which is right here, and Pekja. Now you can see that there are other people around. Like this group right here, which is just labeled Mahan, is actually not a kingdom. This is a confederacy of city-states. So there are lots of little what we would call polities, or very tiny little kingdoms that sort of make up the Mahan Confederacy. There's also this little group right here called the Gaia Confederacy, which is similar. And it's fair to note that basically nobody on the Korean Peninsula at this point has natural allies. They have all sort of given each other black eyes and beaten the mess out of each other at one point or another. Another thing that I was very excited to find is that here on our map, we see these two groups, the Lelang and the Daifang. These are the last remnants of Chinese Korea. So back when the Han Dynasty was very, very strong, the Han Dynasty controlled most of this sort of northern Korean region, and even sort of further down here into the actual peninsula part. And there were several of these things that the Chinese called commanderies. But the Lelang and the Daifang are the last two that exist, but they are still closely tied back to the Han. So I am, once again, very excited about this map because it's accurately depicting what we're talking about. And we're going to start down here talking about the Shilla. So what's up with the Shilla? Okay, so they are in the process of growing. They are not what we would consider at this point the strongest of the three. I've actually sort of arranged them in, at this point in time, weakest to strongest. I'm missing some stuff, but I don't want to invade Russia in the winter. Invading Russia at any time of the year would be a bad idea. Yeah, I think so too. Invading Russia in a land war is not the wisest thing, especially when they're perfectly willing to run backwards and basically make you hold all this empty territory, which is pretty much what they do all the time. Red's accordion playing is such a great backdrop for this stream. Who's playing accordion? I've never considered accordion music as a background, but sure, why not? Drop Bear, don't forget about the Ottomans and the Polish and a whole bunch of other people that have invaded Russia and tried to do land war stuff. It doesn't work so great. You don't want to be there. No, Gunner. I mean, so let's just be honest. I mean, I do want to be famous, but I mean, you're probably going to charge me for it, and I don't have the money to pay you. So just bugger off. All right. Okay, so Shilla Kingdom, probably at this point the weakest of the three, but they are starting to play politics, and they're starting to try to exert some external influences. And one of the areas that they're trying to do that is in that little group called the Gaia Confederacy. And the Gaia have several different political groups, you know, some small kingdoms, little bitty city-state kind of things. And the Shilla are going to get involved in pushing some of them around. But this is actually going to draw the Shilla sort of into this larger problem with these confederacies, and that is they fight a lot. And this is going to get Shilla pulled into something that's referred to as the Eight Port Kingdoms War, which runs for a few years from 209 to 212, where basically 8 of these cities that are ports along the southern coast of Korea all decide that they're going to just attack Shilla because Shilla's trying to exert influence in the area and they don't like this idea, so we're going to go attack Shilla. They're going to invade Shilla territory, and Shilla is actually able to push all this stuff back out, mostly because the attacking force is not necessarily unified very well. The Shilla are, of course, one larger group with a more stable, centralized government that's able to move things around more. If you're fighting a whole bunch of small people as one smaller to medium-sized person, you've got a decent chance if you can start playing them off of each other and stuff like that. So, this is actually going to turn out fairly well for Shilla, because by the time they are done winning this 8 Port Kingdoms War, they're actually going to end up sort of claiming some of the Gaia Confederation as vassals. And one of the bigger of the Gaia Confederacy cities is going to have to send their prince up to the Shilla Kingdom as basically as a royal hostage. You know, they say it's to foster friendship between our countries, but in reality, it's, if you don't do what I tell you to do, I'm going to kill your kid. So, which is pretty common in a lot of ancient warfare. The biggest problem for Shilla, though, is the next sort of biggest kingdom up, the Pekcha. And the Pekcha are almost constantly invading the Shilla during this period of time. They invade 7 or 8 different times along this particular mountainous border where they both want to try to claim. Are you not entertained? Steve Sketches. Hey, Steve. For those of you that are not already following Steve, you totally should go follow Steve. He's a great dude. He's an amazing artist that is very generous with his time and helps people out a lot. Has recently started doing some game streaming. And if you are so inclined, you might go watch him while a digital avatar of me that is a bounty hunter apparently wrecks things in Darkest Dungeon. You swapped you out for Kay so you could take on the Cove. Okay, that's fine. That's totally appreciated, by the way, because it's more fun if people that are in the room get to do the wrecking. Steve, if you want to share any of your social stuff, if, your ArtStation or Instagram or anything like that, please do feel welcome. Everybody should go follow Steve, really, for real. He's a good guy. We also have the Cave Geek in the room. I just actually talked about Cave earlier. We were talking about finding stuff and then automatically assuming it's a religious artifact, or ritual artifact. Hey, Martest. And the Martest is in the room. You should totally go follow Martest too. And I guess I could let everybody know. Cave and I have sort of started an unofficial book club. And this came from the fact that everything is ceremonial until proven otherwise, right? It's all religious until you can prove that it isn't. So Cave had a lot of books that that we were talking about that I thought were particularly interesting, and I got my hands on one. So we are currently reading this book. It's called The Mountain People. It's by a guy named Turnbull. So if you want to grab that and read along, we just started. I think we're both like maybe 20, 25 pages in. So you've been practicing your caveman skills using bamboo you cut in the backyard with an axe to run a Cat 5 cable through a drop ceiling. That is excellent. I appreciate that. UBC, hey Vern, good to see you. What's it about? So the book itself is about these group of people called the Ik. It's the IK, but they're a tribe in Uganda, and I don't know too much about the book because I've never read it before. But if we go over here, why is my? I don't like this pixelating kind of stuff that's going on. But the Ik people live right up here in this corner of Uganda, where Uganda and Kenya and Sudan all meet up. And the basic premise, as far as I understand it, is that an anthropologist went to live among them and found that because of modern politics and the leftover remnants of colonialism, these people that were normally nomadic had been forced to live in a non-nomadic lifestyle, and it sort of wrecked their culture. It's apparently a bummer book, but it also has sort of a here's what happens when stuff happens kind of message for it. Steve, thank you so much for those raid, man. As always, you don't have to apologize, dude. Life happens. You've been streaming literally all day, right? So you go do your thing, take care of the kids, and hang out with the wife and do all that fun stuff. I'll see you around. Thanks, man. Everything is an offering to the kitty. Definitely a cautionary tale, right? Yeah. So there's that. So for those of you that might not know who I am, I'm Shane. I'm a historian. I also do archaeology when I can get out to the field and do stuff like that. I've traveled fairly extensively around the ancient world, and we talk about history. We goof off and make jokes and talk about video games and sometimes politics and make dad jokes and stuff like that. But we're tonight talking about the kingdom of the three kingdoms in Korea, and we'll talk about Japan by the end of the chat. And right now we're talking about a group of people that live right around in here, this place called Shilla in Korea. And I really don't know why Google Earth is deciding to do that weird pixely thing where it just decides to sort of render weirdly. I don't know, man. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, we're talking about the Shilla kingdom at the moment, and we're talking about how they had some conflicts with their neighboring kingdom of Pekja. So let me switch back over here. So here's the Shilla kingdom, and here's Pekja. And I know it's spelled with a B, but you actually say it with a P sound. It's kind of like almost like a puffing of the lips, like a peck, like a, which could be a B or could be a P, but the modern version is Pak, which P-A-K, which is pretty common in Korean. So yeah, these two kingdoms of Pekja and Shilla are almost always at each other's throat, and Pekja, being the larger of the two, sort of saw an opening, especially while Shilla was tied up down in the south, to kind of take over this area and add some stuff. Ghostface Shilla. I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. The Wu-Tang is for the kids, right? In the Pekja-Shilla fighting, usually what happens is the Pekja are invading and the Shilla are having to fight them off. There are a few occasions where the Shilla get really, really lucky and sort of demolish the initial attack and then sort of go on the counteroffensive. But neither side is really going to be able to get the leg up on the other. What's really, I guess the bigger thing to know about this is laying the groundwork for what is going to be a very, very long and sort of tumultuous relationship between these two particular kingdoms. They're not really ever going to get along with each other that much. They're almost always going to be at each other's throats. And the tides of Korean politics sway so much and change so much that sometimes one of them is going to be bigger than the other, and sometimes that's going to be, a cause for concern if you are in the other kingdom. Now, there is some weird evidence that is potentially circumstantial, potentially accurate, that there was some invasion from Japan into the kingdom of Shilla during this period. Now, that's hard to place. It does sort of get referenced in Korean sources, and some of the later Japanese sources seem to hint at this being a thing, but we're not sure. It's likely that there were occasional dust-ups between the Yamato court, which is growing in Japan at this time, and the kingdoms of Korea, but it's hard to say. So sometimes if we look at the Korean sources, it looks like Japan is potentially a vassal. The kingdom of Wa, just W-A, is how the Koreans refer to the Japanese at that point. So it might be that there is a bit of a back and forth. One of the Japanese sources says that the invasion of Korea was done in revenge. So maybe there was some fighting going on between the two at that point. If we take the sources absolutely literally, certainly both sides are at war. One of the Korean sources says that at one point there were princes being sent from Shilla over to Japan. Now, the Japanese, of course, are going to claim, oh, well, this is a hostage. But the Korean sources seem to present it as, no, it's diplomatics. But here we go. This is that thing that Meg was talking about at the beginning. Do we trust that? Which side do we trust? How much of it is true? Everything's really sketchy during this period in this area. So we don't absolutely know. But the Shilla kingdom is growing, and they were beginning to expand sort of out of their what we might consider traditional shell of influence. So let's talk about the Baekje. Oh, the Baekje. So what's up with these guys? Well, because of their particular location, they are more exposed in the north. So if we look back over here at the map, we can see that their northern border is here with this extension of what was at the time the Han Dynasty. But I'm here to tell you that the Han Dynasty was not necessarily keeping a lot of this area under constant surveillance. So there was a lot of flux of people groups from this region down into the Korean Peninsula. And this is going to be pretty impactful for the Baekje, because not only do they have this sort of larger beef with the Shilla, they also don't really care for the Chinese, and there's that other big Korean kingdom of Goguryeo that they don't care for either. So they're sort of surrounded by people that are not necessarily their best friends, and this is going to actually cause them to strengthen their internal consistency. It's during this time in the kingdom of Baekje that we see this guy named King Goi. And he rules from 234 to 286, which is a really crazy long rule for the ancient world. And this guy is going to be pretty friggin' important for the Baekje kingdom, because he is sort of credited as the guy that really put them on the map. The guy that sort of took what was a kingdom with some sort of outlying areas and really firmly turned it into a state. He is going to be the guy that puts together all of the bureaucracy you know that a state has become centralized when they start having all of the bureaucracy, right? Because otherwise, why do you want that much bureaucracy, right? Do we really need all of these administrators running around if there's not really a use for them? Some people might say yes. People that are administrators would, of course, say, yes, my job is essential. You can't do the kingdom without me. I'm the guy that keeps all of the sewers running. Like, okay, sewer dude, that's an important role, but do we really need you? Of course. I don't know if there was actually a sewer dude in Pekja. I was just trying to think of what might be a lower level administrator in a kingdom of something like that. So, and that was actually kind of I based that off of what Tyrion Lannister got stuck doing in Game of Thrones. So if you've actually read the books, it talks about this a lot more than the show does. But Tyrion started off basically having to fix the sewers in the Lannister capital city. And, of course, goes on to do all that stuff. George, if you're listening, we'd really like another book. And we'd really like the book after that, too. So if you could, hop on that would be awesome and much appreciated. Don't die before you finish it, because whoever they get to finish it won't write it the same way. You haven't read those in forever. I have read all of them once. I read the first 2 books. Either the first book or the first 2 books back when I was in high school. And I could tell that they were okay, but I could also tell that it was going to be a really big involved thing. And I think either the second book or and I can't remember, either the second book or the third book just took forever to come out, so I kind of forgot about it. And then it became this big hit TV show, and I was like, oh yeah, I think I've read those. And so then I read all of them all the way through. So I've read all of them once, at least. You did a marathon read when you got stuck on P duty. Ah, alas. The bureaucracy is holding George up, distracting him by making him pay taxes. I think the money that people like HBO and Netflix are throwing at him is what's holding him up. Why go, toil over writing a book that's going to make you, a couple $1 million when you could just sit on set and make the same amount of money doing significantly less work, right? I mean, it's just economics. But alas, that's what happens when you get super famous. I just know that I would love to be so famous that I don't need to finish my book or my series, Hi, I'm the guy that designs bottles for Snapple, and I feel I must justify my job's existence. Redesign Snapple bottle. What the heck is this? Budget Snapple? Hey, Batbird. Good to see you. Budget Snapple. Somebody came up with, Crystal Pepsi and clear, what was it? New Coke. Yeah, somebody came up with all of these things. Somebody gets paid to do that. Let me write that last book for you. Let the people write the book for me. And then I'll just put my name on it. Right? Okay, so King Goy, he's a really long-lived ruler. He makes the bureaucracy work. And he is going to be responsible for doing a lot to grow Pekja. And he's going to expand a lot, especially south, down into the Mahan Confederacy and take over a lot of those areas. And he's also going to start pushing on those 2 Chinese commanderies in the north, the Lelong and the Daifang. And that's going to sort of put Pekja in the crosshairs of the Chinese. And that gets them a little bit in the sticky wicket spot. And for a little while, the Chinese are going to be really interested in making sure that Pekja isn't going to get too big. And what's really noticeable is that when King Goy does a lot of this stuff and is doing all this expansion, and then sort of pops up as a blip on China's radar, the history sources say that he went to Shilla to seek a truce Like, okay, look, I know we've been invading you like a bajillion times, about once every 2 or 3 years for like the last 50 or 60 years, but it would be really cool if we could like call a truce, because I've now made China kind of mad, and I would rather not have bad guys completely surrounding me. And Sheila kind of tells them to shove it. They're like, no, we're not forgiving you, and we're not making friends with you, because you've been a horrible person and you've invaded us multiple times. God save the man who came up with Red Mountain Dew. I actually like Red Mountain Dew. Code Red's not so bad. I actually like it. I kind of like it more than regular Mountain Dew. And the orange Mountain Dew, if you can find that, what's it called? I think it's called Livewire. If you can find that, that's pretty good too. And I know that my wife is a big fan of the blue one, which is the Baja Blast, which you can only really get at Taco Bell, I think. I think that's the only place you can get it, like at a restaurant. And she really likes the blue stuff, the Baja Blast. I am not a fan of Taco Bell, and I haven't eaten there since 2005, though. So there is a watermelon one that was on sale, but it was sold out. Hey, Nick, it's good to see you. I've not had the watermelon one, so I cannot speak to the tastiness of the watermelon Mountain Dew. It might be the best thing ever. I don't know. What about King Czechia? I mentioned him because he's kind of an unfortunate position. He rules for 3 years, but there are 3 pretty interesting years. Your boyfriend used to work at Taco Bell, and Taco Bell is literally the only place you can get Baja Blast. Alas. We may never know if the watermelon is the good stuff. Taco Bell is a restaurant. Yeah, it's... Shiggy, I don't know if you're being sarcastic or not, but yeah, it's a restaurant. They sell food, and I'll use the finger quotes. The watermelon one is very weak favored. Hey, Clooney, good to see you. I've never had it, but thanks for the feedback. I'll probably not get that unless it's given to me then. They come out with 3 trial flavors every year. Do they really? So I have missed a lot of Mountain Dew flavors that I did not know even existed. I've got to up my game. Wasn't there a purple one at one time? Now that I'm thinking about it, I think there was a purple one. Taco! Hey, Red Jar Jam, good to see you. How are you? Alright, so Czechia. Why are we talking about Czechia? Well, here's the thing. Remember me telling you that the kingdom of Baekje had sort of ticked off the Chinese a little bit. Well, the prince of Baekje ends up deciding that he's going to marry the daughter of the Daifang commandery, which is kind of like a really weird thing to do. If you are the son of a Korean king, why are you going to go marry this Chinese princess? Because that's like not cool. And this is going to cause a fairly large domino effect. So King Czechia marries the Daifang daughters, or Daifang commander's daughter, and it looks like the Baekje are trying to position themselves as the new big dogs in Korea. Why not? They had been doing expanding. They might be able to leg up. Well, the other kingdom in Korea, the Goguryeo, are not going to stand for this. They don't want the Baekje becoming super close allies with the Chinese, because that would be trouble for the Goguryeo. So now we end up with this war where the Goguryeo are going to go to the other Chinese commandery, the Leilong, and they're going to go, look, these guys are trying to cut you out too. You should team up with us and we'll go beat them up. And the Leilong are like, oh, they're doing what? Oh, no. So the Leilong Chinese commandery invades Baekje. And in 289, They kill him. They kill Czechia. And I know this is sounding a lot kind of similar, like Pekja is the kingdom and Czechia is the guy's name. But, yeah. They kill him. And that's going to sort of set all of the Pekja designs back for a little while. And they get real quiet for quite a bit. So what's up with the other group? The Goguryeo. Confusing? You betcha. One kingdom of China allied with one foreign commander of the Chinese. Another kingdom of Korea did not care for that and allied with another foreign commander of the Chinese, and then that foreign commander of the Chinese killed the king of the other kingdom. Because that's so totally clear, right? I think you only have the base Mountain Dew here, alas. Yeah, the live wire. We talked about the live wire. You're watching with the volume off, so you're going to imagine Shane is discussing MASH and is misspelling the character names. We have been visited by a puppy. Do you want to come and see me? Hey, do you want to come up here? Oh, yes, I am being petitioned. Come here. Come and see me. Come on. Come on. Oh, yeah. Look, it's a puppy. Oh, hello. Oh, hello. What are you up to? Is that all that you wanted? Literally just want to get up here and give me some sugars? She wants her booty scratched. What are you doing? What was that? What was that? Oh, really? Really? What are you up to? Ooh, I don't know what you're saying. I don't speak puppy. Woof. What do you want? Do you want to go outside? Is that what you want? You'll have to go see Brittany. Woof, and then runs out the door. No, go see Brittany. Woof. Oh my goodness gracious, that dog. Oh, the puppy of war. You have gone down a Mountain Dew rabbit hole. Seriously, don't have the sound on so you can't even hear the payoff to that joke. Alas. Oh, there's a whole list of Mountain Dew. She just liked the Goguryeo. Yeah, there we go. I forgot to see who. Hey, Tuna, good to see you. Goguryeo. Alright. Yeah, she is a prima donna. She thinks that she runs the house. She's a big mess. Alright, so what's going on with the kingdom of the Goguryeo? Well, they're having some trouble. Your cat thinks she runs the house, and she does. What does prima donna mean? Basically, it's pop before about 1984. I don't know when Madonna actually started. I just totally guessed on that, by the way. So don't hold me to that date. I just guessed. Anyway, okay, so the biggest problem that Goguryeo is facing is that during this period of time, during the 3rd century, the central authority in China is falling apart. China falls into an enormous civil war that stretches for decades, and the political spectrum of China shifts very, very rapidly several times. And a lot of those Chinese commanders that are up on the border with Korea are going to take that opportunity when the central authority is down, to kind of do their own thing. And a lot of the what you might consider border lords or regional military governors of China are going to start basically deciding that they can do whatever they want to. And because Goguryeo is the largest of the Korean kingdoms, and also because they have the biggest border with the Chinese territory, well, the Goguryeo are basically going to get stuck on the front lines trying to deal with a lot of these Chinese warlords. Humans are the pets of cats. I've seen that said before. You don't want to know what Madonna was like before she was recognized as Madonna. I'm not sure. An Italian girl from New Jersey, perhaps. I don't actually know very much about Madonna the singer. She might have been an Italian girl from New Jersey. I do not know. I can't say that I've ever really listened to much of her music. I mean, I know a lot of her songs and I've heard them on the radio and stuff, but I don't think I've ever actually gone after and listened to a Madonna album. Which seems kind of weird considering all of the music that I've listened to. Huh. Maybe I should do that. I know back in the 90s she used to have a lot of music videos that were pretty good. So, there's that. Your cat adopted you. Oh, well, don't you feel privileged? And shouldn't you then give that cat everything that cat wants? I mean, it's kind of part of the deal, right? So, China falls apart, and because of that, these warlords along the border are going to start thinking that it's time to expand their own pocketbooks. You know, the more land that they take over, the more money that they have. And this is going to cause a lot of disturbance inside of Goguryeo. So much so that they're going to end up having to move their capital city, which you know is a big deal, right? If you move the capital, you are signifying that something really bad is going on. And they moved the capital to a new place called Hwando. And I have a photo of that. And I also just realized that I forgot to show you one of the photos. So we're going to pause here and kind of have a little bit of a photo break. So this photo is the burial tomb of one of the kings of Shilla at this time, a guy named Michu. And you all know that I really appreciate Tumuli. I really enjoy these big tombs and mausoleum kind of things. But this is a site that you can go visit in Korea today if you want to. Pretty neat stuff. But this is a photo of what remains of the fortress that was Hwando. But I just like moving your capital. I just like doing it. It's fun. We just pick up and move and spend some time and hang out. But you can see here the new city, which sort of runs down the side of this hill. But check, I chose this picture in particular because look at the walls that we're building here, right? These are really big walls with these big fortifications and big towers. You could tell that when they moved to this city, they were under a lot of stress and a lot of pressure because you don't spend the time and effort in the middle of a war to build walls these big if you don't absolutely need them, right? It's just not necessarily the best thing to do with your manpower. If you have to build walls this big, something is up. And these are pretty big. The scale here is sort of lost. I tried to find a picture with a human being in it, but I was not able to do so. This is a house, though, back here. Or not necessarily a house, but a smaller building. What can we use for scale? Trees, I guess? They don't look very high. Well, we're getting to that. They moved to Hwando, and they sort of get themselves in some trouble. So they moved their capital back, And for a little while, the kingdom of Goguryeo ends up basically being a vassal to one of these Chinese warlords, which is not the position that they wanted to be in. So they start trying to look for a way to get out from under these Chinese, or this particular Chinese warlord. This guy's name is Gongsun-de, if you're super interested in that. But when this stuff happens, the leadership changes really, really fast. And the guy that was sort of Gongsun-de's boss ends up getting murdered. And that sort of leaves this Chinese warlord hanging out in Korea a little bit overextended, if you will. And if we look at what happens next, we are going to sort of tip our hand a little bit and look at China here for just a second. It looks like a bunch of small rocks arranged on the ground, right? They were scared of Mexicans in China as well all the way back then. No wonder Trump was so scared of them. Alas, not that kind of wall. But if we look at China in the middle of our 3rd century, we can see that there's no longer a Han dynasty. Instead, we have 3 different kingdoms down here too, the Wei and the Wu and the Shu. But note that the Wei are going to claim all of this area up here in Korea, including a big chunk of what was Goguryeo. So what happens here? Well, here's the thing. The Goguryeo kingdom is under occupation by one of these Chinese warlords. The warlord's boss dies. Well, he doesn't die, he gets murdered. And then there are other Chinese warlords, including the leader of the Wei, and I know that it's like, this is the Wei, but this is WEI. And the leader, yeah, somebody already said it. There we go. So the clan that is in charge of the Wei territory is a group called the Cao family. Right, and sometimes you actually see this referred to as Cao Wei, the state, the kingdom, if you will, of Cao Wei. Do you know the Wei? I know of the Wei, but I am not a bunch of Ugandan knuckles trolls on the internet. Anyway, the Cao family, under one of their generals, reaches out to the Goguryeo and they go, "Hey, we hear that you have a problem with a warlord." And the Goguryeo are like, "Yeah, we actually have a really big problem with one of these warlords. Is there anything that you could do to help us out?" And the Wei clan, or the Wei leaders, go, "Yeah, we can totally do that. You form an alliance with us, and we will help you get rid of this guy." And they go, "Okay, this is a good idea. We like this." So the Wei army shows up, they help the Goguryeo become independent, and then the Wei army leaves. And here's where the Goguryeo make a mistake. They had this alliance with one of the bigger kingdoms in China, and everything looked great. Everything was going okay. And then the Goguryeo made the decision, you know what? They're having a big civil war down there. They won't notice if we take some of this territory that used to be Chinese. They'll never miss it, right? They'll not know that we took this territory, these commanderies, the Leilang and the Daifeng. Like, they'll never know. But it turns out, Baskin Robbins always finds out, right? Cao Cao, yes. Of course Cao Cao has an offer. You're amazing just the way you are. No, you're amazing. Anyway, so the Goguryeo decide that they're going to take over these 2 Chinese commanderies, Leilang and Daifeng. They're just going to take them over, and nobody will know. Well, the Wei family, or the Cao family, does find out, and they invade. And in 244 to 245, there is a war where the Goguryeo just get flat wrecked. And the reason those walls aren't really standing now is because at one point, the Chinese basically sack the city and destroy a bunch of it. Now, the Chinese do eventually leave after basically chastising the Koreans into subservience again, and they're able to move back into Hwando, but the Kingdom of Goguryeo is not in a good spot right there. And they basically have to stop all of their external attempts at expanding. And at one point, there's this invasion of nomadic people that kind of comes out of Siberia and Mongolia region that manages to take some of their kids hostage, like the royal family kids hostage. So this is a pretty low spot for the Kingdom of Goguryeo. And even though China's kind of falling apart, they were still able to show up and wreck everything in Korea. So we end the 3rd century in Korea with the Shilla being stronger, the Baekje being stronger but not necessarily able to do anything about it, and the Goguryeo being significantly weaker. So one that's good, one that's in the middle, and one that's clearly on the bad side of things. But that's averaging out, isn't it? You know, even Stevens, I guess. Yeah, so they're invaded by nomads. That's pretty low. Yeah. Invaded by nomads and unable to beat the nomads, and then have to send your kid off as a hostage to the nomads. That's pretty low for a kingdom that at one time thought that they were going to be able to take down China. So, how quickly the tides have turned. Right? This was not necessarily sudden but inevitable betrayal. It was just, you got wrecked. It happens. You get big, you mess up, you get punished. Right? Okay, so there's that, and that is going to conclude our portion about Korea specifically, but we'll talk about them some more in relationship to their larger identity when it comes to Japan. Because again, these countries are right beside each other. If we're looking at the map here, where's my map? Here's Korea and here's Japan. You know, they're just right across this strait from each other. I mean, how big could China be? All of this? Like all of this? Pretty big. Pretty big. Alright, so moving over here to Japan. We're mostly going to be looking at the southern part of Japan down here. The big island again is referred to or called Honshu, and then you have Shikoku and Kyushu. Shikoku is this island here, and Kyushu is this guy here. So mostly this southern part, and especially this nice fertile plain right around here, and this fertile region right around here. Nippon, indeed. That's where we're going to be talking about. What is the deal with the pixelation stuff? That's going crazy. Okay, so what's going on with Japan? When we talked about them last phase, or rather shared a common ancestry. Yeah, well, that's what I was actually about to get to. We talked last phase about how the Koreans ended up populating a large portion of the Japanese islands and actually sort of set off what was an agricultural revolution inside of Japan because they brought wet rice farming to Japan. And the populations then sort of kind of mixed together. The further north you get into the Japanese archipelago, the more independent, unique they are, ethnically speaking. There are a couple people groups that are further up the archipelago that are genetically more similar to people that are over in what today would be Russia and Mongolia and Siberia. But yeah, Japanese are more likely from India. So everybody in Asia is more or less from India. But that's because when human beings were first migrating, when we left Africa... Oops, sorry, I'm moving a bit too fast. When we left Africa, the first place we stopped over was right here in the Levant. And then the next place we stopped over was right over here in Mesopotamia. But when we got to India, humans actually sat there for a really long time. It's a pretty big hub of migration, and there were several waves of population that left India. One of them, at about 80,000 years ago, was responsible for basically populating all of Southeastern Asia and Australia. It moved up here into China and populated all of it. Moved over here, down into the Philippines, up into Japan, up here from Russia, and then over here into the New World somewhere around 22 to 20,000 years ago. So basically everybody in this part of the world at one time or another probably had a cousin that lived in India, but we're talking tens of thousands of years ago when humans were migrating by foot just a couple of miles, maybe a year or so. So Japan has traced a lot of things to be closer to a specific group in India. They think traveled to Japan. Shiggy, I have not seen that. I'm not saying that you're not telling me the truth, but I have not seen that particular research, and I have done quite a bit of research on migration patterns, and I have not seen that thing. So if that is there, it might be very new and I just don't know about it. It might also be that I just have a giant blind spot in my research, which is possible because I don't know everything, right? If you have something that summarizes that's like an article or something, I'd love to read it. Because I'm always interested in learning the new stuffs. Okay, so if we're looking right down here, the bottom part of Japan, again, this is where most of the big urban stuff is growing. Growing here meaning expanding, not growing like agriculture. But they do have agriculture, and it's organized, and they've had their agricultural revolution. Their populations are going up. And for the very beginning of this phase, the 3rd century here, they are still in what is referred to as the Yayoi period. That is going to end pretty soon, and we'll talk about that switching over in just a second. But so Japan at the time... Okay, so I'll say this, and then I'll qualify what I'm saying. There are a lot of people that know, or they say that they know about what's going on in Japan at this time, and a lot of them are basing what they think they know on some really shaky, very infirm footing. The sources that we have from Japan at this time are from about 400 years later. There are 2 big history books in Japan. One of them is called the Kojiki, and one of them is called the Nihon Shoki. And they were both written during a period of time called the Nara period, which is like the early part of the 700s to the end of the 700s. So this is, again, 400 years or so separated from the time period that we're talking about. Now, that doesn't mean that it's automatically not true, but I think everybody understands that if you don't write something down for 400 years, it can get a little fuzzy, right? If I don't write something down that I'm supposed to do tomorrow, I'm likely to forget it. That being said, there are documents from Japan that describe this period of time, historically speaking. We also have references to what's going on in Japan from both China and Korea, so we have some additional sources. But here's the thing. Between the sources in China and the sources in Korea and the sources in Japan, they really don't agree that well. The timelines for this period of the 3rd century are really shaky. A lot of the events that China or Korea will refer to are not mentioned in the Japanese history, and the Japanese history sometimes mentions things that the Koreans don't cover, or that the Chinese don't cover, or that doesn't show up in either Chinese or Korean sources. So it would be really nice if we had a situation where international historical sources all managed to, kind of work together and give us a really clear picture of what's going on, but we really don't have that. That being said, there are a lot of Japanese archaeologists and historians that treat a lot of this stuff that we're going to talk about as absolutely provable fact. I can't, on my part, agree with a lot of that. But, you know, I am not purely a Japanese historian. I don't have a PhD in Japanese history. I can't read ancient Japanese sources. So I'm not probably the most authoritative person on this. I would love to be better educated, but I don't think that a lot of the stuff that people say definitely happened can really be proved to have definitely happened. I think some of these people might even be kind of legendary, but yeah, like Tuna says, we'll just have to make a time machine and we'll just go back and figure it out, right? Okay, so here we go. What's going on in Japan? Well, a few things. We do know that they had some relationships with the Chinese. We do know that they had relationships with the Koreans. And actually, one thing that we can absolutely attribute to a source is this little weird object. This is a stamp seal. This is it kind of looking down, and then this is the bottom of it. This is considered one of the national treasures of Japan, and this is called the King of Wa gold seal. And basically, this has some Chinese inscription on it that came from a particular Chinese king, Guangwu, if you're interested. And the Chinese sources talk about making a deal with the King of Wa, which again is Japan. And this is recorded in Japanese sources. And that particular item was discovered archaeologically several hundred years ago and is now, again, considered one of the national treasures of Japan and is in a museum. You can go see it. But this was an exchange of gifts between an organized government in China and an organized government in Japan. So to us as people interested in Japanese history, this is a very, very firm moment where we can say we know that the Japanese were on board doing stuff, that they were active trade partners, that they had international relationships. And that's good to know because that is a very firm stepping stone that we can use both to determine events after it and events before it. So we do know some stuff, but do we know everything? How about this lady? This lady, well, I'm sorry, I should have typed her name. This lady is referred to as Empress Jingu. And this is a print of her. I love this Japanese printmaking stuff. This is so awesome. I really just appreciate all of the detail and things that we've got going on here. Anyway, so this is Empress Jingu, and she is one of these people that is hard to talk about authoritatively. Now, if we look at Japanese sources, they're going to say, oh yeah, she was totally a person, she totally ruled, and they even give her years. They say that she ruled from 201 to 269, which is 68 years, which is pretty long for a ruler to rule. Maybe not as long as the 100-year-long reigns of some of the kings that are over in Korea, but that's a pretty healthy chunk of time, right? So we can't really know if she's really who she says she is, historically speaking. This is another one of those situations where in Japan and Japanese sources, in the Kojiki and the Nihon Shoki, they go, oh yeah, Empress Jingu. We know all about this stuff. Queen Elizabeth scoffs. Only 68 years. What is Elizabeth on right now? I can't even remember how long she's been in power. Lots of power and a long time. So there are a couple of potential identities that might actually be historical bases for Empress Jingu. And one of them is a fairly popular figure in Japan called Himiko. Were they like child rulers who had guardians ruling in their stead? So, Nix, that's a fair question. And sometimes Japan does have very young rulers that took over when they were pretty young. But Empress Jingu supposedly took over rule after her husband was killed. So she was already old enough to be married. And even if we do something really, really conservative, like say maybe she was married at like 13 or 14, that would still put her being like almost 80 years old by the time that she died, which is not impossible, but it's the ancient world. And if you lived that long, you got luck on your side. So Queen Elizabeth has been on the throne, according to Tuna, 69 years. That's crazy long. So could Empress Jingu actually be this figure named Himiko? Well, maybe. So this is Himiko. This is a statue of her that's in Japan. Himiko is sort of a folk hero kind of person who... Oh man, 1952. Good gosh. That seems, like, historically speaking, just so long ago. Queen Victoria was fairly long on the throne as well. Yes, so Queen Victoria was the longest ruling British monarch until current Queen Elizabeth passed her. Please check your math. I don't do math in my head, so I'll bring up the calculator here. Oh, no, I won't, because my computer hates that, and it's starting to flash at me, so I won't do that. So she's been ruling since 1952. All right, so 52 to 2000 is 48 years, and it's 2021 now, so what's 48 plus 21? Yeah, so 69 years. There you go. 69 years and a little bit. Almost going on 70 years. It'll be 70 years in February next year. So, there we go. All right. Math. And I'm not even the math guy. So, who is Himiko? Well, again, she is a person that shows up in Chinese and Korean sources. So, if you read Chinese and Korean histories, they say, oh, yeah, we did a lot of trade with this Japanese queen called Himiko. And we exchanged ambassadors and did all this stuff with her. But here's the thing. So Himiko doesn't show up in Japanese sources. And the Chinese sources say that she ruled later than Jingu, if we take the Japanese dates for Jingu as accurate. So are Himiko and Jingu the same? Maybe? Question mark. I think the larger question might be, can we actually say that Jingu was a real person? Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe she was just kind of a really big, powerful queen for a little while. Maybe she ruled a lot later, and to establish an unbroken line of history, they pushed her sort of back in time when they were writing the Japanese sources. We really don't know. There is another potential identity for Jingu. There's this woman named Yamato Hime no Mitoko, but she is much more of a religious figure. She was a priestess that established this big shrine, and some people even think she might have been the sort of prototype for the Japanese goddess Amaterasu, but who knows? Right? There's a lot of stuff that's a giant question mark about Japan during this time. Now, if you remember back when we were talking about Korea, it is suggested that at one point the Japanese invaded Korea. And according to the Japanese sources, Empress Jingu invaded Korea. And this is in revenge or retribution for something. Or maybe she is the personification of a goddess. Maybe it's the other way around. Why does everybody have to become a god? Why can't God become people, right? What if God was one of us? Just a stranger on a bus trying to find his way home. Oh, the 90s. You were going to say the sun goddess, hence the sun. Right, yeah. So Amaterasu, there you go. So recent genetic studies and linguistic studies show a surprisingly stronger relationship to Indonesia, specifically Malaysians, than Korea and China. So that's not necessarily so far from what I understand either. The and I know this is kind of like a rabbit chase, but we can do rabbit chases if we need to. So the group that came out of India splits right about here. And one group actually goes on here into China, but one goes down this coastline and is basically responsible for populating all of these islands in here. So for Japanese people to have genetically similar makeups to people down here in Indonesia is not necessarily that shocking, but we do know that there were some pretty big influxes of Korean people into Japan back around the 800-ish BC mark. So fair enough for that as well. Okay, so is Jingu a real person? Well, I have one more piece of evidence to talk about before we move on, and that is showing you this. This is her death shrine. So this is actually a big hill, which is called a kofun, and I was going to show you a lot of these, but I figured I would save this as a sort of a happy for the next time we come back to Japan. But this is a big artificial hill, and this marks, according to Japanese official history and according to the Japanese government, this is the burial place of Empress Jingu. It's called the Gosashi Kofun. So, if she wasn't real, who's buried in the tomb? Fair question, right? Oop, wrong one. Okay, so Jingu is going to have a son, and there's actually this really weird story about she gets pregnant with her husband. Her husband gets killed, and in revenge, she goes over to Korea and fights with the Koreans for 3 years, comes back, and then delivers her son. So apparently, like according to the ancient sources, she was carrying this child for 3 years. Yeah, you can take that as a grain of salt as well. But let us move on to her son, a guy named Ojin. And also the topic of tonight's song pun, Ojinize, which is probably surprising and might be a little bit weird to think that, I don't know. I don't know how many people think that I listen to Billie Eilish. I don't like all of her songs, but some of them are pretty darn good. So, a salty emote. A salt? What? I don't get the salt emote, sci-fi, I'm sorry. Oh, Ocean Eyes, like seawater. Okay, now I'm putting it together. Ojin. So the song is Ocean Eyes, if you don't know it. You should go listen to it. It's actually pretty good. But Ojin. Ojin is this guy. And he is supposedly Jingu's son, who goes on to become the king. Take it with a grain of salt. I see. Okay, there we go. There's the grain of salt. So Ojin is an interesting guy. His rule is another one of these things where is he real or is he not real? And if he is real, the Japanese historical sources give him the years of reign 270 to 310. Is that actually when he ruled? Who knows? Is it possible? Sure. Is it also potential that it's just all made up? Yeah, probably could be completely made up. But what's interesting about him is that his reign is going to sort of mark a transition period in Japanese history, because after his reign, historians become much more clear and much more firm with dating the Japanese rulers. And when I say dating here, I don't mean taking them out for a nice steak dinner. I mean putting them on a timeline. Especially the emperor that follows. One of the guys' name is Kimu, who is a pretty important emperor because he's one of the guys that we can sort of pin down rather accurately and know that he was really a person. Ojin, you'll date some Japanese rulers. I think there's a prince that's single. So there you go. Or there might actually be two princes that are single. I can't remember how many kids the current emperor has. The imperial clan, by the way, in Japan is still the very same imperial clan that was emperors at this point. This is the Kofun period that we have entered. So we have left the Yayoi period, and we have entered the Kofun period, which takes place at about 250 or so. But Ojin is going to be the guy that is sort of the transition. He's the last one that might be sketchy, possible, bad, not dateable. But it's also pretty clear that if he was real, he was ruling a lot later. He was ruling probably in the 500s and not the 200s. Is that a new game? You needed someone to date after those hateful birds? Oh, angry birds? I'm not sure. I don't know. I can tell you this, though, that Ojin is such a well-liked ruler, according to the sources, that he goes on... So he was in the room for 300 years. Well, it's pretty clear that if Jingu was a real person, she was also ruling a lot later, too. The dates here are sketchy and not accurate. We can't take them into account. All right. So, anyway, Ojin is going to become so popular that he is going to be deified. And he becomes a Shinto deity that is one of the more important ones, named Hachiman. I don't know of Hatoful Boyfriend. No, I don't. Is this one of these like flash games or something, or like a dating sim that I try to stay away from? At least he wasn't descended from a horse. Hey, that was a unicorn and a dragon, and he fell from the sky. So you leave that. Anyway, this is Hachiman. Hachiman is still a fairly popular Shinto deity, and Hachiman is still the I guess patron deity of many shrines in Japan today. So this is sort of what happens when you get to be a really good ruler, according to the sources. They turn you into the god of archery and the god of warfare, which seems to be a pretty decent gig, right? But here's the thing again, is Hachiman or Ojin, is Ojin really a ruler? Is he really a person? And we don't really know. Okay, so look, here's the deal. I don't keep up with dating sims. That is not something that I give a lot of attention. If I have a giant gap in my knowledge on dating sims, I don't feel as bad about that as I do not knowing about recent publications about Japanese migration. Just to be honest. A dating sim is a video game where you play a protagonist and you basically try to flirt with various other digital characters inside of the game to try to convince them to date you. So it's basically like a role-playing game where you win when you get the person that you want to date you. Yep. Oh, they're all pigeons. It's both a parody of dating sims and something that's actually pretty wholesome. Oh, wow. There we go. There's a game of dating weapons. It sounds like a precursor to Pokemon. Oh, no. These are things they're very much alive and a big market today. Oh, Hachiman. Oh, Hachiman sounds like a Pokemon. Yeah. History of dating sims is the next topic for our viewer request stream. Shiggy, here's the beautiful thing about it. You can request all that you want. I do reserve the right to just say no. I don't want to do the history of dating sims. It's not that it's below me. I just don't want to. So I don't think that one's going to make the list. All right. So is Ojin real? Yeah, maybe. We have a tomb for him. Look, it's a tomb for Ojin. So is he real? And if he's not real, who's buried in the big hill thing? Again, it's a big question mark. We're not sure. And the Japanese government is really, really, really protective of doing archaeological work either in or around these big tombs. So we might not ever know. I was reading an article where this particular archaeologist was claiming that he had stupendous levels of access to the other tomb, the Gosashi Kofun, where Jingu is supposedly buried. And basically, he got about 2.5 hours to walk around the outside with Japanese observers. And that was unprecedented access. So they're pretty strict on what sort of archaeology gets done to these. Dating sims in Japan are funny because they are endorsed by the government in the hope that it increases birth rates. But it has had the complete opposite effect, alas. National religion in Japan is Shinto. How old is that? Was it back then as well? Yes, it was. The religion of Shinto at this point would have been forming, would have been coming together. But Shinto practices had been going on for a long time before that. It is becoming more formalized as the country becomes more formalized, but yeah, it's around back then. This is more complicated than who is buried in Grant's tomb. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Almost all of the religious adjacent sites are pretty strict. Getting to go to Issa was something that was hard to swing. Oh, did you get to go? So Issa Shrine is the shrine that was supposedly founded by Himiko, who might have been Jingu. So there you go. It would be cool to go to Issei. I don't think I'd ever be able to swing that. So, yeah. But, alright, ladies and gents. That is going to wrap us up. Because with Ojin, we do cross over into what may be the 4th century or maybe the 6th century, depending on when he's actually ruling. But I think that we understood what's going on in Japan right now. There are people that are the emperors. There are centralized governments that are capable of building some big monuments and stuff like that. They do have external relationships with China and Japan. Their government is becoming more centralized. Their ideology is becoming more centralized. But that's all that we can really be sure about. So, you have seen some crazy anime that you think would have made sense if you understood more about Shinto. That's quite popular because Shinto deities and Shinto theology and stuff shows up a ton in anime. A ton. But oh yeah, that is all that I had planned for tonight. But as always, if there are additional questions or anything that you all want to talk about, I am up for that. Otherwise, I might sneak over here onto the old Twitcher and see who we might be able to raid. See who is around and hanging out. I can also look on my Discord to see if anybody that's from our new group of friends in the Knowledge Foundation is streaming. Might be able to go raid some thinky people. Let's see who's streaming thinky stuff. Thinky stuff. Not seeing anything that looks particularly up my alley. Was Gojira born yet? Well, if we take the origin story of Godzilla, no, because Godzilla was created by nuclear blasts that came out of the ocean. So there were no nuclear weapons at that time. Therefore, no Gojira. Talk with the Japanese professor of yours and he got you able to go. That's nice. It's pretty cool and powerful. Everything also smells amazing, like the giant trees. Yeah, that'd be really cool. Thinky people is a good description of this chat. I think so too. Cave just started streaming. I don't see him on my active list, but I guess I could search for it. Yeah, let's go raid Cave. We haven't raided Cave in a while. And I think that is a worthy raid. Cave's a good dude. And, nope, wrong button. What am I saying? Cave's a friend, and he's a good guy. So let's go raid Cave. Let me do the search. Well, I guess we need to wait until like he's actually up. Does he have his Is he still stream starting soon? Yeah, he's still stream starting soon. So
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
Tuna!
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
Always so generous with the gift subs. Tuna, thank you so much for that. Much appreciated. And Kata Clooney, welcome to the adventure. You now get to share all of the cool emotes. Yeah, so Cave is starting soon, so we'll kind of hang around here, and I guess I could talk a little bit about some stuff. Anybody have any questions about anything? Anybody want to know like what's going on in the world, what's up with anything, how things are operating? I guess I could just also kind of talk for just a second. Let me put this on mute, and as soon as Cave pops up, we'll go raid him like right off the bat. When is the Middle Earth stream? So, Finesse, I talked about that briefly at the top of the channel, or the top of the stream. I probably do need to cover that again because we have a lot more friends in the room. So, the goal for both the History of Middle Earth stream and the Billy Joel We Didn't Start the Fire stream have been met. I was planning for, and I am ready to give the History of Middle Earth stream this Saturday. However, I've been notified that there are going to be a lot of people that are not going to be able to watch on Saturday, but the larger issue is that we are currently staring down the barrel of a hurricane that looks like it's going to hit us this weekend. So I don't want to promise a stream and then be wrecked by a hurricane and everybody clear schedules and move things around if I'm not certain that I'm going to be able to do it. So we are going to hold off on History of Middle Earth stream this weekend. I do apologize for that, but just to sort of make this clear, I also don't want the hurricane. I would much rather be hanging out with you all talking about Middle Earth. I don't want torrential rains, straight line winds, any of that stuff. We can do without all of that, right? All right. Would it put out the fire? Quite possibly. So about We Didn't Start the Fire, I am considering doing that one sort of like a bonus viewer request stream. So maybe doing it on a Tuesday at our normal streaming time. But I'm also considering doing it on Saturday. So Saturdays are sort of our traditional bonus stream time, and I usually do them on Saturdays fairly close to the middle of the day as an attempt to try to make it easier for people that are, donating towards the goals along the way. Let me know what you think. If you are in the Discord, you can go over to Stream Chat or just shoot me a message and kind of let me know what your preferences are. If I can't promise that I'm going to be able to make everybody happy. I'm certain that I'm not going to be able to. But if you have a preference to doing the We Didn't Start the Fire on a Saturday, you can let me know that, or if you would prefer to do that on a regularly scheduled sort of afternoon time, you could do that too. Saturday is Adventure Outdoors Day. Yeah, and see, that's another thing. Like, I know that a lot of people have stuff to do on Saturdays, and that gets kind of crazy, so. Did you see that Adam Savage posted a build? Yes, I have seen that he posted that. I have not watched the video. The model that he's building is the perfect grade 160 RX-78 Unleashed version, and it's sort of the top of the line model that's out right now. It's one of the fanciest ones that they've ever made, and I am excited to watch that. I think it'll be really neat. Another hurricane, you had to deal with torrential rains of Henry. Yeah, so there's already Ida, and Ida is in the Gulf right now, sort of barreling down towards us. You're originally from Florida, so you usually wonder why other states freak out about hurricanes. Well, I'm from Mississippi, and we've had our fair share of really, really bad ones. Not that Florida hasn't, but I mean, it's been pretty messy around there. So, anybody in the Gulf knows that hurricanes are a part of the deal. I'm not freaking out. I also just want to make sure that I don't promise that we're going to do a stream and then the power be off and I can't do anything about it. So I might still stream on the weekend. If I do, I'll probably just do some Gundam build stuff and we can just chat and hang out. But just keep an eyeball on the Discord and we'll plan it. So maybe the following Saturday we'll do some Middle Earth, and maybe the following Saturday we'll do We Didn't Start the Fire. I don't know. Maybe. If only internet could run off gas. I'd prefer it to run off of solar power, but that's just me being picky. All right, everybody. Let's go raid the Cave Geek. Cave, of course, is a pretty frequent guy in the channel here. If you've been around, you know Cave. He's a great dude. Show him some love when we get there. Our battle cry is adventure, and then you can throw all of those lovely adventure hats into the chat, and we'll have a good time. So the next scheduled stream is this time next week. So 1900 Central Standard Time on Thursday next week, and we'll continue with our exploration of the 3rd century. So thank you all of you so much for hanging out. I hope you have a great weekend, and I hope that everybody is safe in the crazy world of COVID. Otherwise, I'll see you around. Take it easy.